Drake unlimbered himself from the bed, selected a bottle from the menu, and dialed. The robot bellhop whirred, and a chute opened on the wall, and a bottle slid out. Drake poured, and handed the tumbler to the girl and said, "This is your party. What do you have in mind?" The girl took a sip of her drink before she answered. Then she looked up at Drake with her deep brown eyes. "Two things. One, I have no intention or desire to compete with Anson Drake for the necklace of Algol. Both of us might end up in jail with nothing for our pains. Two, I have a foolproof method of getting the necklace, but none for getting it off the planet. I think you probably have a way." Drake nodded. "I dare say I could swing it. How does it happen that you don't have an avenue of disposal planned?" She looked bleak for a moment. "The man who was to help me decided to back out at the last minute. He didn't know what the job was, and I wouldn't tell him because I didn't trust him." "And you trust me?" Her eyes were very trustful. "I've heard a lot about you, Drake, and I happen to know that you never double-cross anyone unless they double-cross you first." "Trade about is fair play, to quote an ancient maxim," Drake said, grinning, "and I'm a firm believer in fair play. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, what do you have to offer? Why shouldn't I just pinch the gems myself and do a quick flit across the galaxy? That would give me all the loot." She shook her head. "Belgazad is on to you, you know. He knows you're here. His own private police and the Shan's own guard will be at the coronation to protect all that jewelry." She cocked her pretty head to one side and looked at him. "What's between you and Belgazad, anyway?" "I stole his toys when he was a child," said Drake, "and he hasn't trusted me since. How do you propose to get the necklace of Algol, if I'd hint?" She smiled and shook her head slowly. "That would be telling. You let me take care of my part, and I'll let you take care of yours." Drake shook his head. "Not so slowly. Absolutely not. We either work together or we don't work at all." The girl frowned in thought for a moment, and then reached into the belt pouch at her side and pulled out a square of electro-engraved plastic. She handed it to Drake. Underneath all the flowery verbiage, it boiled down to an invitation to attend the post-coronation reception. It was addressed to Miss Caroline Smith, and was signed and sealed by the Shan of Thizar himself. "I'm Caroline Smith," she said. "I've managed to get in good with the family of Belgazad, and he wangled the invitation. Now the plan is this. Right after the invocation, while the new Shan is being prepared in his special coronation robes, the nobles have to change their uniforms from red to green. Belgazad will go into his suite in the palace to change. He'll be accompanied by 2 guards. One will stay outside, and the other will help Belgazad dress. I've got the room next to his, and I've managed to get the key that unlocks the door between them. I'll use this." She pulled a small globe of metal from her belt pouch. "It's a sleep gas bomb. It'll knock them out for at least 20 minutes. No one will come in during that time, and I'll be able to get the necklace and get out of the palace before they wake up." "They'll know you did it," Drake pointed out. "If you're still missing when they come in, the thief's identity will be obvious." She nodded. "That's where you come in. I'll simply go out into the garden and throw it over the wall to you. We'll meet here afterwards." Drake thought it over and smiled devilishly. "It sounds fine. Now let's coordinate everything." They went over the whole plot again, this time with a chart of the palace to mark everything out, and a time schedule was arranged. Then they toasted to success, and the girl left. When she was gone, Anson Drake smiled ruefully to himself and opened a secret compartment in his suitcase. From it, he removed a long strand of glittering jewels. "A perfect imitation," Drake said. "And you're very pretty. It's a shame I won't be able to hang you around the neck of Belgazad in place of the real necklace of Algol." But his original plan had been more dangerous than the present one, and Anson Drake was always ready to desert a good plan for a better one. Coronation Day dawned bright and clear, and the festivities began early. There were speeches and parades and dancing in the streets. A huge fleet of high-flying rockets rumbled high in the stratosphere, filling the sky with white traceries of their exhaust. For all of Thizar, it was a holiday, a day of rejoicing and happiness. Cheers for the Shan filled the streets, and strains of music came from the speakers of the public communications systems. Anson Drake missed most of the fun. He was too busy making plans. The day passed as he worked. Thizar's sun began to set as the time for the actual crowning of the Shan approached. At the proper time, Drake was waiting in the shadows outside the palace walls. There were eyes watching him, and he knew it. but he only smiled softly to himself and waited. Psst! It was the girl on the other side of the wall. "I'm here," whispered Drake. Something that glittered faintly in the soft light of the twin moons of Thizar arced over the wall. Drake caught it in his hands. It was the necklace of Algol. He slipped it into a small plastic box he was carrying, and then glanced at the detector on his wrist. The screen showed a pale blue pip, which indicated that someone was hiding in the shadows a few yards to his right. Drake didn't even glance toward the spy. He put the plastic box containing the necklace into his belt pouch and strode away from the palace. He had, he figured, about 20 minutes. He headed directly for the spaceship terminal. Never once did he look back, but the detector on his wrist told him he was being closely followed. Excellent. Inside the terminal, he went directly to the baggage lockers. He found one that was empty, inserted a coin, and opened it. From his pouch, he took a plastic box, put it in the locker, switched on the lock with his key, and strolled away. He glanced again at his detector. He was no longer being followed by the same man. Another had taken up his trail. It figured. He went straight to the Hotel Gandil, making sure his tail didn't lose him. Not until they were in the lobby did he make any attempt to shake the man who was following him. He went into the bar, ordered a drink, and took a sip. He left his change and the drink on the bar and headed out the door in the direction of the men's room. Whoever was following him wouldn't realize for a minute or two he was leaving for good. A man doesn't usually leave change and an unfinished drink in a bar. Drake took the lift tube up to his room and attended to some unfinished business and waited. Less than 3 minutes later, the door was opened. In walked Viren Belgazad and his lieutenant, Jomis Dalbajel. Both of them looked triumphant, and they were surrounded by a squad of royal police. "There he is," said Dalbajel. "Arrest him." A policeman stepped forward. "Anson Drake, I arrest you in the name of the Shan," he said. Drake grinned. "On what charge?" "The theft of the necklace of Algol." Drake looked directly at Belgazad. "Did old Fatface here say I took it?" "You can't talk that way," Dalbajel snarled and stepped forward. "Who says so, ugly?" At that, Dalbajel stepped forward and threw a hard punch from his shoulder, straight at Drake's face. It never landed. Drake sidestepped and brought a smashing uppercut up from his knees. It lifted Dalbajel off his feet and sent him crashing back against old Belgazad, toppling them both to the floor. The policemen had all drawn their guns, but Drake was standing placidly in the middle of the room, his hands high above his head, regarding the scene calmly. "I'll go quietly. I've got no quarrel with the police." One of the officers led him into the hall, while the others searched his room. Belgazad was sputtering incoherently. Another policeman was trying to wake up Dalbajel. "If you're looking for the necklace of Algol," Drake said, "you won't find it there." The captain of the police squad said, "We know that, Mr. Drake. We are merely looking for other evidence. We already have the necklace." He reached in his belt pouch and took out a small plastic box. He opened it, disclosing a glittering rope of jewels. "You were seen depositing this in a baggage locker at the spaceship terminal. We have witnesses who saw you, and we had it removed under police supervision." Viren Belgazad smiled nastily. "This time you won't get away, Drake. Stealing anything from the Palace of the Shan carries a minimum penalty of 20 years in Thizar prison." Drake said nothing as they took him off to the Royal Police Station and locked him in a cell. It was late afternoon of the next day when the prosecutor for the Shan visited Drake's cell. He was a tall, imposing man, and Drake knew him by reputation as an honest and energetic man. "Mr. Drake," he said as he sat down in a chair in the cell, "you have refused to speak to anyone but me. I am, of course, perfectly willing to be of any assistance, but I am afraid I must warn you that any statement made to me will be used against you at the trial." Drake leaned back in his own chair. One nice thing about Thizar, he reflected, they had comfortable jails. "My Lord Prosecutor," he said, "I'd like to make a statement. As I understand it, Belgazad claims he was gassed, along with the police guard who was with him. When he woke up, the necklace was gone. He didn't see his assailant." "That is correct," said the prosecutor. Drake grinned. That was the way it had to be. Belgazad couldn't possibly have bribed the cops, so they both had to be gassed. "If he didn't see his assailant, how does he know who it was?" "You were followed from the palace by Jomis Dalbajel, who saw you put the necklace into the baggage locker. There were several other witnesses to that." Drake leaned forward. "Let me point out, my Lord Prosecutor, that the only evidence you have that I was anywhere near the palace is the word of Jomis Dalbajel, and he didn't see me inside the palace. I was outside the wall." The prosecutor shrugged. We admit the possibility of an assistant inside the walls of the palace.